Imagine standing beneath an Ice Age sky, 30,000 years ago. Smoke curls above a distant valley where one tribe gathers around fire. Beyond mountains, forests, rivers, and glaciers, another tribe does the same. Nearly 1,000 miles separate them, yet their spear points, carvings, necklaces, and rituals seem strangely familiar. No letters. No roads. No maps. Not even a written word. So how could ideas travel farther than any person ever walked? Archaeologists uncovered matching symbols across continents. Historians argued for decades, proposing coincidence, migration, imitation, or sheer luck. Every explanation solved one mystery while creating another. Each discovery whispered that something invisible connected distant people. Knowledge survived impossible journeys. Traditions crossed frozen frontiers. Innovation echoed through generations. But who carried the message? Who remembered every detail? Who ensured nothing vanished forever? Perhaps the greatest invention of ancient humanity was never carved into stone. What if ancient humans had already built a communication network, one we almost completely forgot? Somewhere between distant campfires and unfamiliar horizons, invisible chains of memory stretched farther than any river. Every meeting, every shared hunt, every exchanged gift may have carried more than survival. It may have carried civilization's earliest conversation. Life during the Ice Age was a constant negotiation with death. Every journey invited danger. Hungry wolves, cave lions, and enormous bears stalked the same valleys people crossed. Blizzards erased footprints within minutes, while freezing winds turned exposed skin numb. Food could disappear for weeks, forcing families to gamble everything on unfamiliar landscapes. Beyond each ridge waited strangers whose intentions were unknown. Some became allies, others defended their territory without hesitation. In such a world, even surviving tomorrow felt uncertain. The idea of sharing information across hundreds of miles seems almost impossible. Yet the Earth keeps revealing a baffling contradiction. Archaeologists repeatedly uncover remarkably similar stone tools, hunting techniques, ornaments, and craftsmanship scattered across vast distances. These discoveries refuse to fit the simple story of isolated tribes. Somehow, ideas traveled where people rarely could. Someone carried skills. Someone preserved memories. Or perhaps an unseen network quietly connected humanity from beginning. Long before words were carved into stone, the human body became humanity's first language. A raised hand could signal danger. A pointed finger could reveal hidden prey. One fearful glance warned others to stay back, while a confident nod invited trust. Around ancient campfires, survival often depended on movements rather than voices. Hunters rehearsed their plans through demonstrations, silently acting out every step before sunrise. Young children learned by imitation, copying skilled hands until knowledge became instinct. Even rhythm played its part, with synchronized footsteps and shared movements helping groups work together without confusion. These silent signals crossed differences in spoken language, allowing strangers to understand the most important messages almost instantly. Fear, hope, caution, and cooperation needed no translation. But there was one problem no gesture could solve. A hand signal vanished the moment it was made. Gestures could unite people standing together, but gestures couldn't cross a continent, so what carried information farther? Stories became humanity's first libraries long before shelves existed. Around every fire, elders carried centuries inside memory alone. They recited family histories, repeated victories and tragedies, ensuring no lesson disappeared. Songs hid survival knowledge within memorable rhythms, teaching children where water flowed when seasons changed. Myths transformed mountains, rivers, and dangerous valleys into unforgettable landmarks, guiding future travelers without maps. Rituals quietly preserved practical skills, from preparing food safely to tracking migrating herds. Every performance strengthened the message, and every child who learned it became another living copy. Generation after generation, knowledge walked farther than any single person could. Stories cross lifetimes with remarkable accuracy, carrying wisdom beyond the reach of memory's original keeper. They connected people separated by decades and landscapes, preserving identities against time itself. Yet one mystery remained. Stories alone couldn't explain identical stone tools found thousands of miles apart. Who carried the ideas between distant tribes? The greatest messengers in human history never knew they held that title. They were hunters following migrating herds beyond familiar valleys. They were families searching for safer lands after harsh winters. They were daughters and sons joining distant tribes through marriage, traders exchanging rare stone for shells, and seasonal visitors returning with stories from places few had ever seen. None of them carried books or written messages. Instead, they carried something far more valuable. A better way to shape a spear point. A new hunting technique. Unfamiliar words that slowly blended into another language. Myths from distant firesides. Warnings about dangerous rivers, fierce predators, or changing climates. Every meeting became an exchange far richer than food or tools. One traveler shared an idea with one tribe. Years later, someone from that tribe passed it to another. Generation after generation, knowledge moved like a relay, traveling farther than any individual ever could. Long before written history, humanity had already discovered that the fastest way to move information was not through objects, but through people themselves. The greatest messengers in human history never knew they held that title. They were hunters following migrating herds beyond familiar valleys. They were families searching for safer lands after harsh winters. They were daughters and sons joining distant tribes through marriage, traders exchanging rare stone for shells, and seasonal visitors returning with stories from places few had ever seen. None of them carried books or written messages. Instead, they carried something far more valuable. A better way to shape a spear point. A new hunting technique. Unfamiliar words that slowly blended into another language. Myths from distant firesides. Warnings about dangerous rivers, fierce predators, or changing climates. Every meeting became an exchange far richer than food or tools. One traveler shared an idea with one tribe. Years later, Then archaeologists uncovered something even more astonishing. Sharp black obsidian from distant volcanic regions appeared hundreds of miles from its source. Delicate seashells rested deep inland, far from any coastline. Rare stones crossed entire regions, while colorful mineral pigments surfaced in caves separated by vast wilderness. These discoveries weren't accidents. They were clues. Every object had traveled through countless hands before reaching its final destination. And whenever people gathered to exchange valuable materials, they rarely traded only objects. They traded ideas. A hunter demonstrated a stronger spear design. A traveler described unfamiliar animals beyond the mountains. Another shared a safer route through dangerous valleys or a better way to survive brutal winters. Information became as valuable as anything carried in a pouch. Each meeting strengthened connections between communities that might never meet again. Slowly, an extraordinary picture emerged. Ancient landscapes weren't empty frontiers dividing isolated tribes. They were linked by invisible highways of movement, trust, and exchange. Long before roads or kingdoms existed, humanity had already woven together a hidden network that quietly carried both treasures and knowledge across astonishing distances. Not every message needed a voice. Some were carved into stone, painted across cave walls, or etched into tools that survived long after their makers were gone. Handprints, geometric patterns, strings of beads, and carefully decorated weapons appeared again and again across prehistoric landscapes. They were not full writing systems, yet they spoke in ways almost anyone could understand. Certain marks warned of danger. Others honored powerful animals, claimed territory, marked changing seasons, or expressed shared spiritual beliefs. A stranger might not understand another tribe's language, but these symbols often needed no translation. They created a common visual vocabulary that outlived generations and crossed cultural boundaries. Even after spoken words faded into silence, the symbols remained, waiting for new eyes to understand them. Then archaeologists noticed something impossible. Similar patterns kept appearing in caves and settlements separated by thousands of miles. Coincidence seemed increasingly unlikely. If these people had never met, why were they leaving behind such remarkably familiar symbols? With every new excavation, the mystery deepened. In distant regions that had no obvious connection, archaeologists uncovered remarkably similar hunting weapons, nearly identical blade-making techniques, matching ornaments, and artistic styles that echoed across landscapes separated by immense distances. Each discovery challenged the belief that ancient communities lived entirely isolated lives. Scientists searched for answers. Were these similarities nothing more than coincidence? Could different groups have invented the same ideas independently? Or had knowledge quietly traveled from tribe to tribe, spreading so gradually that its path disappeared beneath thousands of years of history? The debate continues, but the evidence has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Every familiar tool, every repeated pattern, every shared innovation adds another piece to an invisible puzzle. By now, the clues begin fitting together. Silent gestures, living stories, wandering travelers, ancient trade routes, and enduring symbols no longer seem like separate discoveries. They appear to be fragments of something much larger. Something capable of carrying ideas across an entire world without a single written word. The answer was hiding in plain sight all along. Ancient humans never needed one extraordinary traveler to carry a message across 1,000 miles. Information moved the way a flame spreads from one torch to the next. One tribe taught a neighboring group how to shape a stronger blade. Months, years, or even decades later, that knowledge reached another community through trade, marriage, seasonal migration, or shared hunts. Each group added a small piece before passing it onward. No single person witnessed the entire journey, yet the idea kept moving. In many ways, it resembles how information travels across the modern internet. A message doesn't always follow one direct route. Instead, it passes through countless connections before reaching its destination. Ancient humanity built something remarkably similar, not with wires or satellites, but with relationships. Every encounter became another link in an invisible chain stretching across continents. That network had no ruler, no capital, and no written records. It was decentralized, flexible, and incredibly resilient. If one path disappeared, another eventually formed. Knowledge survived because it lived inside people instead of stone. Suddenly, the scattered clues made perfect sense. Matching tools, shared symbols, familiar traditions, and distant innovations were not isolated coincidences. They were evidence of humanity's first communication network, one powerful enough to connect strangers across generations and unimaginable distances. Everything we believed about prehistoric isolation had to be rewritten. Long before coins, kingdoms, or fortunes, the greatest treasure a person could possess was knowledge. A single lesson could mean the difference between life and death. Knowing where herds migrated could feed an entire community through a brutal season. Understanding how to build a stronger spear increased the odds of a successful hunt. Recognizing medicinal plants could save a wounded child, while discovering a better way to start a fire might keep an entire family alive through freezing nights. Even warnings carried enormous value. A dangerous valley, an aggressive rival tribe, or a river that flooded without warning were all pieces of information worth more than any precious stone. This invisible exchange of ideas transformed humanity. Every shared discovery gave another community a better chance to survive, adapt, and thrive. Instead of starting from nothing, each generation inherited the hard-earned wisdom of countless people before them. That quiet network of shared knowledge became the engine behind human expansion, allowing our ancestors to spread into new environments with remarkable confidence. Civilization did not begin with wealth. It began with information freely passed from one mind to another. Although thousands of years separate us from those ancient campfires, the instinct that shaped their world still shapes ours today. We teach our children through stories long before they can read. We pass traditions from one generation to the next. We travel, trade, exchange ideas, and use symbols that communicate instantly across cultures and languages. The tools have changed, but the purpose remains remarkably familiar. Smartphones replaced campfires. Satellites replaced wandering travelers. Digital messages replaced spoken tales. Yet every innovation follows the same timeless pattern, one person sharing knowledge with another. Our ancestors understood something we still depend on every day. Information grows stronger when it is shared. Every conversation, every lesson, and every discovery becomes another link in a chain stretching through countless generations. Perhaps that is the most astonishing realization of all. So many inventions we proudly call modern may simply be ancient human instincts wearing new technology. The network evolved beyond recognition, but its foundation was laid tens of thousands of years ago, when memory became humanity's greatest bridge across distance. The mystery that began with two distant tribes no longer feels impossible. Those ancient people were never isolated cave dwellers wandering through history without purpose. They were participants in something extraordinary, a vast human network woven together by trust, memory, movement, and cooperation. Every story remembered, every symbol carved, every traveler welcomed, and every lesson shared strengthened invisible connections stretching far beyond any single lifetime. They proved that the greatest distances could be crossed without roads, maps, or written words, because knowledge lived inside people willing to pass it on. Long before ink touched paper, before kingdoms rose, before empires expanded, and before the first alphabet was ever imagined, humanity had already mastered its greatest technology, preserving knowledge by carrying it from one mind to another. Across mountains. Across rivers. Across generations. Across thousands of miles. Perhaps that is history's most overlooked achievement. The first global network was never built from cables, towers, or satellites. It was built from ordinary people who understood that survival depended not only on strength, but on sharing what they knew. And because they did, their voices still echo through us today.